until we get a general understanding from those two, Jay-Z and Dame Dash, we may never know why Roc-A-Fella Records didn't take off the way it was supposed to take off. What's going on, everybody? You're right on time for another ride on the Groove Line with your host, Chris Stevens. Hopefully you all are doing well out there. Hopefully your weekend was good. Is your Monday off to a good start? Hopefully it is. But if it's not, that's what we're here for. We always talk music on this channel. And today we're going to go into hip hop. I know this is usually an R&B, jazz, funk, disco, EDM dominated channel, but I would be remiss if I didn't cover some of the hip hop that influenced my life and some other people's lives as well. So we're going to talk about another album that turned 25 on Halloween, October 31st, 2000. Whew. I have so many stories about being 19 at that point in time in my life, and this album ties into it. And so we'll get into it. Which album am I talking about? I'm talking about Roc La Familia, The Dynasty by Jay-Z. Now, mind you, it's important to note that when Roc La Familia was first being discussed in the spring of 2000, it was supposed to be a Roc-A-Fella compilation album, sort of like what Rough Riders was doing with Ride or Die 1 and Ride or Die 2, which had an incredible run that summer. Actually did a Ride or Die 2 review on this channel. I'll put the link to the description below. But I think Dame, Hove, and Kareem Biggs Burke felt like, I don't know if we can do this the same way. Because granted, Rough Riders had a really good head start. As I say all the time, never forget, DMX was once hip-hop's biggest star after Big and Pac died. It wasn't a Hove at first. It was not. It was probably Mace and Puff, because they were capitalizing off of Biggie's name. But DMX was hip-hop's biggest star for a time before Jay-Z ascended with, shucks, do we want to say? I don't know if Volume 3 did. I think maybe Blueprint did it. Yeah, I think Blueprint probably is the better answer. But DMX on Rough Riders, it didn't mean that they just had to say DMX presents Rough Riders. You could really literally go Rough Riders presents Rough Riders Ride or Die Volume 2, because you already knew who the Locks were, even though they were on Bad Boy. They were trying to get like hell to get off of Bad Boy. We knew that Eve had just released her solo album, and it did crazy numbers. Drag On's album didn't do crazy numbers, but Drag On was still very important to the mix. They knew Swiss Beats. Not everybody knew Memphis Bleak. Not everybody knew Beanie Siegel. Not everybody knew Emil. And I think what hurt Roc-A-Fella at that particular time was the fact that Rough Riders had Swiss in-house. Granted, I'm not sure if it's a good idea to put your nephew in charge of all production, but Rough Riders got away with it. So the problem was that Hove, Dame, and Biggs didn't have producers that they could just lock in on and become the sound of Roc-A-Fella. That's where we start with the Dynasty. This is a very transitional album because you hear two producers for the very first time on this record, talking about Just Blaze and Kanye West. And granted, I have not talked about Kanye very much on this channel because I just can't get with who he is right now. Who he used to be as a musician, as a producer and a rapper, great. But he's just done so much other stuff that I can't be bothered with. But I'll mention him for the benefit of this episode because it's one of the most important tracks on the album. But yes, so the Dynasty starts off with this eerie piano-based, synth-based Just Blaze sample that Hove just starts meandering on the meaning of life. The theme song to The Sopranos plays in the key of life on my mental piano. Got a strange way of seeing life like I'm Stevie Wonder with beads on the do-rag. Intuition is there, even then my vision is impaired. It's one of the best intros in hip-hop history. The beat is cinematic. Hove is talking his best, sitting in a diner, waiting for the next move or contemplating what happened with the previous move type of rap. It's very mafioso, very hustlerish. It's a great intro. And you have, Rick Rock does a great job on this album too with Change the Game, Parking Lot Pimpin', and Get Your Mind Right with Snoop. Snoop was still, very much heavy into the pimp phase of his career. This was him coming off of, being on the next episode with Dre. Chickens looking at me strange, but I don't care to step up in this mother just to swing in my hair. Like this was still Snoop talking about, but who's the leader? Talk to him and beat him. Get their mind right and feed him. Now I don't need him. but I can do that there. Put on a 3-piece suit and Shirley Temple my hair. Like, Pimp Snoop is an underrated Snoop. I mean, yeah, we know about Gangsta, Bust a Cap in You, all that Snoop. We know about I Get High All the Time Snoop. But Pimp Snoop is underrated. Snoop as a pimp is underrated. I mean, we would find out a couple of years later just how great his pimp rap was when he hopped on the 50 Cent PIMP remix. But yeah, on Get Your Mind Right, he's like literally the lowest class down and dirty pimp you can imagine. You know, talking about get out my line, like, and get your mind right. Like, it's very Mac. It's very the Mac. It's very, man, I have my money. But yeah, Rick Rock is on the production for that. He's on that with Parking Lot Pimpin' with Lil Mo on the You Can Catch Me When I'm Off the Chain, howling at Parking Lot Pimpin'. I mean, this album in particular doesn't really establish any real superstardom for the folks that it was intended to establish. And that's not to say they didn't become stars. I mean, because Bleak had already had a nice run with Coming of Age, and Beanie Siegel came out of nowhere with 1,000 bars, and then the Truth album at the top of 2000. But Emil never really got off the ground, even though she had a really fun single with who else? Beyonce. Y'all remember I Got That? All of the exciting things, baby. I got that. Y'all remember that song? Yep. So Hove has been kind of honed in on Ms. Knowles, who now Miss Carter, for quite some time. Yeah, we can talk that's for another podcast altogether. But just overall, the overall effect of the Dynasty, I mean, it introduced you to folks for the most part. I mean, we found out who Freeway was on 1-900 Hustler, still one of the best posse tracks of the generation. You know, Beans is the telephone operator, and this dude talking about, yo, what's up? This murder killed enough homicide, and I got 2 bricks. And Beans like, yo, watch your mouth, man. He's like, free. Pick up line 5. First things first, watch what you say out your mouth when you talking on the phone to hustlers. Like, just literally jumping on that track with that sort of fire and just warning, introduce the world of Freeway in a way that I don't think too many other songs could have done. But just the overall feel of the Dynasty is it's supposed to be a compilation album. I mean, you get Bleak solos. You got a Bleak solo called Holla, which that's one of the few songs that I just remember off the top of my head. If you real, you know you real and you know you a G, holla. Like, just those type of, moments for a 19-year-old kid who is still trying to figure out his path in life. I was in community college at the time. This was before I went to my 4-year college and got my degree in journalism. But yeah, I was, just lingering around doing absolutely nothing, going to community college, attending classes, taking courses because my mom said I had to, or I had to get out. So there, that was that. And, music carried me through. And it felt like, it's so funny because we all know what happened later on in 2001, but from the space of the fall of 2001 to like winter 2000, it felt incredibly dark. It just felt like an incredibly dark time for me anyway at 19. I don't know how other people felt about that time period, but it just felt like, I don't think this is what Y2K was supposed to be, for me at least. But, listening to the Dynasty album takes me back to a time in my life when I literally didn't know what my life path was going to be. I didn't know if I was going to make it, if I could make it. Like, it just was one of those things that album, as transitional and as scattershot as it is, it still played an important role in my life. It also played an important role in Roc-A-Fella Records as a whole, because now you're starting to see that Hove is now trying to angle himself as the big fish. Because you have Give It To Me with the Neptunes. This is the first Jay-Z and Pharrell pairing that goes off like magic. And then Just Blaze has another great song on this one, Streets Is Talking. It's like the sequel to Streets Is Watching. And Jay's talking about all the rumors in the streets. Is he blood? Is he Crip? Is he that? Is he this? Did he do it? Talking about the incident with Lance on Rivera. And then, he's talking about everybody stressing. Who's his baby's mom? Who he got pregnant? Let me tell you. Then he goes on to say on This Can't Be Life, which is Kanye West's debut as a producer, he said it gets worse. Baby mother water burst. Baby stillborn. Still I got to move on. So it's like, again, for this to be an album that was meant to be sort of like a celebration of Roc-A-Fella, I mean, there's some dark moments on here. I mean, Stick to the Script, that's another pimp type song. Like Beans is talking about, all he gonna do is, you know, give a woman some, what, drop a number two and be gone. Like he said, I ain't got time to stick around and play step pop. And it's like, but yeah, I think if you had to make me rank the people who benefited the most from the dynasty, Beans is at the top. Beans is absolutely at the top because Philly supported that man like no other and still does. The man ain't got no voice no more. He got ambushed once he got out of jail, got shot up, lost a lung, but he's still doing great work in the community. And also, Beans had a beef with Jadakiss. You guys may remember this. I have to tell you that story a whole nother episode. But it was so funny last summer to see these dudes. It actually was this summer. These dudes were selling food out of a food truck together. Now, mind you, I remember when the State Property versus D Block mixtape war was on and cracking. Like, you literally wondered if these dudes were crazy enough to take it off of wax. It was a scary, scary time in hip hop because this is when everybody was beefing. Jay was beefing with Nas, Prodigy and Mobb Deep, even his own mentor, Jaz-O. State Property versus D Block. It was like, I mean, this was right after 9/11. I mean, more of that darkness. But now, 20-something years later, Jadakiss and Beanie Siegel are selling food together and having a good time doing it. As the great Kelly Prenny said on Insecure, what is that? Growth. Like, that is major, major growth. Like, these dudes literally, I thought these dudes were literally going to shoot each other. Now they are grown men in their 40s and 50s selling food trucks together. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive, boy, I tell you. But yeah, back to the overall feel of the dynasty. I mean, it literally is a compilation album. They just put Ho's name on it to get people to buy it because Jay's name was that good. But it also said a lot about how they didn't really mentor and guide folks, back then at Roc-A-Fella. I mean, Bleak got on because Jay saw something in him. Like, Bleak and Jay are still close to this very day. Beans came out of nowhere. So did Emil. Emil was with a group called Major Coins. And Major Coins got kind of shoved to the side because Jay thought he could make Emil a solo star to kind of rival Eve and maybe Mia X with No Limit. And that didn't happen. So I think it's where it fell apart. It's like where Jay said, okay, I'm going to have to be Roc-A-Fella Records. Because Bleak's albums, they were solid, but they weren't selling. Beans had a niche audience. The Philly people who loved that gangster stuff. But Jay was like, I'm going to have to be the pop star on this label. And that's what he ended up doing. But the Dynasty album is very transitional in a way that you get a sense of what Roc-A-Fella Records would become before it completely fell apart in 2005. And that it was going to be Jay-Z's vehicle. It was going to be him to drive. It was going to be him to, showcase it and push it to wherever it was going to be pushed to. Even though they did end up adding Cameron and the Diplomats later on, and they tried to get twisted. They had ODB for a minute until he passed away suddenly. So Roc-A-Fella Records, for all of the potential, I don't think it ever really added up to very much. And that's probably why Dame and Hove are not on good terms now, and probably will never be on good terms again. Because there are two ships just passing in the night in completely different directions. Dame is still trying to get his million from Lee Daniels. Hove is married to the biggest pop star in the world, has 3 kids with that woman, and is doing all sorts of entrepreneurial stuff. So we'll probably never have a concrete answer as to what happened with the downfall of Roc-A-Fella Records. I mean, Bleak and Beans can go on podcasts. I mean, nobody knows where Emil is. I mean, Emil is just like, I don't know. She probably just said, to hell with this music stuff. I'm good. Biggs doesn't talk. Justin, Kanye really don't say much. Do we really want to hear from Kanye about anything these days? I don't think so. I mean, Just Blaze, he's really been tight-lipped about it. So, I mean, until we get a general understanding from those two, Jay-Z and Dame Dash, we may never know why Roc-A-Fella Records didn't take off the way it was supposed to take off. I mean, they still did great work but it wasn't at the level that, people thought it was going to be. And that's unfortunate, but that's why the Dynasty album is just such an interesting listen, because you feel like this is a label trying to figure out who they are, where to slot their key players, their role players behind their superstar. And by accident, they discovered two of the greatest producers of the generation in the process. Sometimes, six in one hand, half a dozen in the other, as my grandmother used to say. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Groove Line. Greatly appreciate y'all for watching and listening. As always, contact information will be in the description below. Be sure to like and comment on the video. What did you think of the Dynasty album? Do you remember it? Do you want to forget it? What's your favorite song on there? What song did you like? What song did you don't like? Let me know. Love to hear from you in the comments. So thank you guys for watching, and until the next time we ride, may you find the groove, or may the groove find you.